Keita suddenly finds himself living with twin stepsisters and they're way too interested in him. The story begins like any normal afternoon after school. Keita walks home expecting peace and quiet. Instead, he's greeted at the door by Ao and Rico, who welcome him far more enthusiastically than he's ready for. Before he can even process what's happening, they decide he deserves a royal welcome. And Rico, clearly enjoying his reaction, takes things a bit too far, leaving Keita completely flustered. Their older sister Hako notices immediately and doesn't like what she sees. Annoyed by his reaction, she tries to steal the spotlight, but Keita has already escaped, spending the rest of the evening desperately trying to calm himself down while the girls prepare dinner. Things only get weirder when Ao suddenly disappears, claiming she needs to do laundry. Rico senses something suspicious and catches her snooping around Keita's things. What starts as a quiet investigation quickly turns into a full-blown argument between the twins, until they get so distracted that dinner ends up completely ruined. Later that night, Keita sits at the table, staring at the burnt meal in silence. The girls insist he eats it anyway, which finally makes him ask the obvious question: why didn't your mom cook instead? Both parents are away on a trip, but the girls quickly reassure him. After all, being alone means they can give him all of their attention. Back in his room, Keita tries to focus on an upcoming school meeting, but his mind is completely exhausted. He tosses the notice aside and lies down, hoping for sleep. Only then does it hit him. He's alone in the house, with three dangerously unpredictable sisters who seem way too interested in him. And this is only the beginning. To be safe, Keita spends the night barricading his bedroom like he's preparing for war. Eventually, exhaustion takes over and he falls asleep. But just a few hours later, he suddenly feels a heavy pressure on his chest. As he opens his eyes, his worst fear becomes reality. Ao and Rico are right on top of him. Before he can even react, he realizes his hands are tied, leaving him completely helpless. And instead of letting him escape, the twins decide to turn the night into a long, chaotic endurance test that leaves Keita mentally and physically drained. The next morning, the moment he wakes up, Keita bolts out of the house, determined to avoid another disaster. Meanwhile, Ao and Rico stumble upon something worrying: the parent-teacher conference notice. For the first time, they start to panic. What if Keita doesn't plan to stay at their school after graduation? Later that day in class, their concern turns into pure fear. If Keita chooses a different path, their dream of staying together could completely fall apart. So they make up an excuse and leave early. Not long after, the twins arrive at Keita's school. And the moment they step onto campus, chaos erupts. Every guy completely loses his mind upon seeing the infamous twins. A crowd instantly forms, turning into a full-blown stampede. At the same time, Keita is on his way to grab lunch. He sees the crowd rushing toward him, panic kicks in. Trying to escape, he accidentally crashes into a girl named Miharu, leading to an extremely awkward and unforgettable collision. Eventually, Keita manages to reach Ao and Rico. They try to thank him for helping them escape, but he finally snaps. He demands to know why they keep coming to see him, knowing it only causes trouble. Ao and Rico are clearly hurt, but they still apologize before turning away. As Keita heads back inside, he notices the conference slip again. That's when it finally clicks. This is why they came. Realizing his mistake, Keita runs after them and apologizes for overreacting. They accept his apology with a warm hug, and for a moment everything feels calm again. Still embarrassed, Keita reminds them to tone it down in public. But once they get home, a new problem appears. His dad is furious, not because of the chaos, but because Keita refuses to fully accept the overwhelming affection being thrown his way. His dad reminds Keita that they're technically just step-siblings, which only makes the situation even more awkward. But no matter what excuse he uses, Keita still tries to act like a saint. The twins quickly shut him down before he can say another word, leaving him completely speechless. A few days later, after dinner, Keita finally shows the girls his latest test results. The grades are bad. He admits that staying awake in class feels like an impossible challenge. Ao immediately offers to help him study with private lessons. Rico jumps in too, but Ao shuts that idea down instantly, reminding her that she's probably even worse at studying than Keita himself. That night, Ao starts the first lesson in his room. But no matter how hard she tries, Keita keeps drifting off. Just when she's about to give up, she suddenly switches tactics. Unfortunately, during the test the next day, his brain completely blanks out, and he only remembers very specific parts of Ao's explanation. On the way home, Keita apologizes for being dumber than a cartoon character. But Ao doesn't get upset. Instead, she calmly tells him she just needs to change her teaching style. That night, she shows up in a normal outfit, making Keita think she's finally stopped being unpredictable. That illusion shatters instantly when he realizes she's turned herself into a walking study guide. This time, Keita locks in completely. He pays attention to every single word, and somehow everything finally clicks. And for the first time in his entire life, Keita actually passes a test. Ao is thrilled when she hears the news later that night and decides he deserves a special kind of encouragement for his hard work. Meanwhile, Riko starts exploring cooking, determined to find a way to make herself useful again, even if her motivations are questionable. The next day at school, Keita's friend Toda and two other classmates confront him. They demand to know how someone like him suddenly started getting good grades. When Keita casually says it's just normal lessons from his sisters, the guys immediately realize the truth and curse their luck for living such painfully ordinary lives. Later that day, a teacher named Yuzuki spots Riko in the home economics room. At first, she's proud to see her learning how to cook properly, until Riko starts treating the ingredients with way too much enthusiasm. That night, Keita wakes up to find Ao sitting on his bed again. Ignoring every warning sign, he sighs deeply and says he's ready for another lesson. Unlike her usual methods, Ao decides to motivate Keita in a new way. This time, she promises him a kiss every time he answers correctly. But Keita has had enough of her tricks and refuses, saying he just wants to focus. Instead of a reward, Ao turns it into a punishment. If he fails even one question, he has to accept it anyway. With no way out, Keita agrees. Surprisingly, he answers every single question perfectly, until Ao suddenly throws in a completely unfair riddle that short-circuits his brain. She calmly reminds him of the rule. Keita sighs and agrees to keep it quick and harmless. But the moment they get too close, things spiral out of control. Ao has to push him back just to breathe. Before it gets worse, Riko steps in and breaks them apart. She questions why Ao keeps acting like tutoring him is difficult when they spend most of the time distracting each other. Trying to change the mood, Riko proudly shows Keita the food she made herself. He gets excited, because this is the first time it actually looks edible. That excitement dies instantly after the first bite. Keita nearly meets his end, while Ao bluntly tells Riko that cooking clearly isn't her talent. A few days later, Keita wakes up and immediately gets ambushed by Ao's affection, only for Riko to shove her aside and demand her turn. The chaos escalates until Keita finally snaps. Their behavior is ruining his focus and messing with his school life. So he lays down a strict rule, a complete ban on kissing. Later that day, Riko secretly watches Ao cook dinner and deliver it to Keita while he studies. She tries her luck, but Keita blocks her immediately, saying the ban still stands, no exceptions. The next morning, Keita gets ready with his dad, who casually makes an extremely uncomfortable joke about Ao. Keita freezes for a moment, then decides to pretend he never heard it. Instead, he mentions that for once, he'd like something genuinely sweet instead of the usual chaos. Riko hears every word. From that moment on, she declares war on desserts. She studies them, practices them, and raids the kitchen like it's the end of the world. Not long after, Riko creates something so dangerous in the kitchen. Despite every nerve in her body warning her that one bite could end everything, Riko decides to taste it. For a brief moment, she almost blacks out, but somehow survives. She considers asking Ao for help afterward, but her pride instantly shuts that idea down. The next day at school, Keita and his friends experience true despair as they watch other guys getting yelled at or threatened by their girlfriends.